Hello, and welcome to a British Cartographic Society Teatime Talk. My name is Chris Rebutis, the BCS Vice President and today's Chair. Today we have Angela Baker, Head of Partnerships and Sustainability for EuroGeographics, where she will be giving the talk Enabling Access to Authoritative Data from European National. I will now pass us over to Angela for the talk.
Thank you so much, Christopher. I will just share my screen. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for having me this evening. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Angela Baker, and as Christopher said, I'm Head of Partnerships and Sustainability at EuroGeographics. I have a very soft spot for the BCS. After graduating from my Master's in Cartography and Geo-information technology from Glasgow many, many moons ago, David Forrest encouraged myself and two friends, Amanda and Suzanne, to get involved in the BCS, and we became the joint editors of Maplines for a short while. And we finished our stint in 2002, so quite a while ago, but we really enjoyed it. So there we go. So this evening, I want to give you a little bit of background about EuroGeographics and then focus on the data pillar of activity for which I am responsible. We will look into our pan-European data production, past and present, our most recent European projects, and the visualization of our pan-European datasets, all of which are about making our members' data more accessible and usable. I want to share some of the challenges and lessons we've learned along the way, and I'm very happy to take any questions at the end, and hopefully if they're not too technical, I will be able to answer them. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues who I've borrowed slides from, including Victoria Persson, our project manager at EuroGeographics, also colleagues at IGN France and iDocs. So hopefully there's something for everyone in my slides. I was getting a bit nervous about what I was including, but hopefully there'll be something that interests all of you. So a little bit about us, if you don't know us. We are the voice of the European National Mapping, Cadastral and Land Registration Authorities. We are a unique international membership association covering all of geographical Europe, based in Brussels, and we have over 55 members from 45 countries. Our members fulfil an essential role providing official, definitive and detailed geospatial information for the public good. And as an association, we bring together these government agencies and departments who have a joint agenda. In the UK, we currently have two members, Ordnance Survey and Land and Property Services in Northern Ireland. In the head office, we're quite a small team of 12 people, 50% of whom are based in Brussels. Unfortunately, not me, I'm in London, and the rest of us distributed across Europe. We are governed by our members, though, and we have a management board who set the strategy on behalf of the wider membership. The United Kingdom has a permanent seat on that management board at the moment, and we also have permanent correspondents for each member who are our main point of contacts. EuroGeographics believes in a society empowered by the use of trusted geospatial services from its members. And we realise this vision by enabling access to official high-value European geospatial data, sharing expertise and best practice, and also demonstrating the use and value of location to link information and access across national boundaries to benefit people and the planet. This vision directs our strategy and thus the activities we operationally undertake, and these are for and on behalf of our members. So a little bit like BCS. So our operational activities that the head office deliver with the support of our members are based around three fundamental pillars of integrated activity: data, representation, and knowledge exchange. I will go into the data pillar of activity in more detail, but first I will give you a quick overview of the other two. So knowledge exchange is really at the heart of what we do for all of our members. We provide opportunities for this at every level of the organisation, from Director General through attendance at our annual General Assembly, to technical staff via our technical data producers, and also in specific areas in each of our knowledge exchange networks. We also offer a webinar series for our members nearly every Thursday, which we increased during COVID and we haven't stopped. And they can join us for an hour, hear from other colleagues about case studies, learn about our work, or hear from other experts. And we also run topic-specific events, often with partners. Our most recent ones were a conference on business models or also AI in geospatial. And these are usually open to anyone. So if you're interested, do have a look at our website. We currently have 5 active knowledge exchange networks, which include a Cadastre and Land Registry Ken, an Inspire Ken, Policy, Quality, and also Technical Data. These Kens meet regularly. Most have one in-person meeting a year, which has really come back in the last year after COVID, and many online meetings and webinars in between. They're a really valuable membership benefit, providing support to members. For example, our knowledge exchange in quality has influenced the setup of quality assurance systems in many of our members, and the Inspire Ken has been a critical network for the technical implementation required for our members. And I'm sure they will be very busy with the revision of the Inspire Directive, which is coming up. So as I said, not all of our Ken events are members only. So if you are interested, do have a look at our website and there might be something that you'd like to attend. So moving on to our second pillar of activity, which is representation. We represent our members' interests by demonstrating the value of their trusted official data, establishing partnerships to ensure we support the public good, and promoting the use of trusted authoritative data within the European, but also the international system. And as I said, we don't just cover EU27, our members are from across geographical Europe, and we represent all of them. A large part of our representation activity is, of course, focused on Europe, and we deliver a weekly detailed tracking monitoring service to all our members. And this is really important, not just for EU27, but all the other European members, to understand the ambitions and strategy of the European Commission and how that can impact them. We've also worked hard in the last couple of years to extend the number of directorates that we have contact with, because of course geospatial underpins so many of key policy areas, such as the Green Deal for Europe and the European Data Strategy. We've also revised our representation strategy recently, and our clear aim is to advocate for policy ownership of GI in the European Commission and in the UN to try and get over this fragmented approach that there currently is. But our representation strategy also covers more global activities, and we support and represent our members at the United Nations through the United Nations Global Geospatial Information Management, UN-GGIM, and UN-GGIM Europe as an official observer. So normally at the UN, you would be represented as a member state, but that's not always the National Mapping and Cadastral Agency, and so we can represent members' interests specifically on national mapping and cadastral and land registry topics through that observer status. We also provide the Secretariat for UN-GGIM Europe, and we actually work closely with the UN to deliver some of their webinars, and we did that in the last year, which was very successful. And so onto our pillar of activity for data. So this is focused on the provision of our members' trusted high-value data to ensure it is used and through its use is valued. Our strategic focus is on positioning EuroGeographics as an enabler that allows users and key stakeholders easy access to our members' data. And we do this through various activities, and this all falls within my remit at EuroGeographics. So a couple of examples are that we work very closely with the European Environment Agency and the Copernicus in situ component, enabling access to national data for the Copernicus services. And we do that through various contracts that we have with the EEA. And I could write lots of slides about that, but I haven't done. But if you are interested, do let me know and I'm happy to talk about that. We also have a contract with Eurostat, and they actually procure our administrative unit data for use within all of the Commission directorates and its agencies. And it's really important for the Commission that they're using authoritative data, especially for boundaries. And we also fulfill this strategic aim through the production and distribution of our pan-European datasets. And that's really what I want to talk to you about. So finally, there's a map on the screen. So we've been coordinating the production of 4 main pan-European datasets for nearly 20 years, where we take our members' national data and we create the pan-European datasets. So we go from national to pan-European. Our members want users to be able to find, access and use their geospatial data. And this includes outside of their national boundaries. So obviously national mapping and cadastral agencies have a very strong national remit, but actually they want other people to use their data as well. And often that's not a priority within the national administration, and we can support that through some of the work that we do. So previously we had 4 main data sets, and these were all produced using official geospatial data from our members. So we had a 1 to 1 million data set, EuroGlobal map, a 1 to 250,000, which is EuroRegional map, that had 7 themes. We had a digital elevation model, and we have a boundary map, which is 1 to 100,000. The data sets are all edge matched across boundaries and also across themes, and that provides consistency across Europe. And it allows the user to be confident that the information provided is comparable and easily shared, regardless of the national source. The datasets are available for use through harmonised licensing, meaning the end user only has to agree to 1 licence for data that's coming from multiple agencies across all of Europe. And previously, EGM was the only open dataset we had, and it was opened in 2013. The others had a licence fee associated with their use. And I know some of you won't be shocked to hear that we, up until quite recently, were providing the data on DVD or FTP. So quite old school, but effective, and it worked. These datasets were meeting the needs of users because they were harmonised, they were edge matched, and they covered the majority of geographical Europe. And most importantly, the data was authoritative. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the production because, as I said, this has been happening for over 20 years, and it really is a fantastic example of international collaborative processes and the bringing together of highly skilled technical people all working in mapping, coming together and creating something special. I have to say, and I shouldn't say it publicly, but this group of people who come together really are one of our favourite groups in EuroGeographics because they're just so professional, they're lovely to work with, and they just are such a joy. They really are. So we have over 40 data technical producers from across geographical Europe, and they will be sitting in our member organisation. So we have a person who's sitting in Ordnance Survey, and they're responsible for this activity. We work on an annual production process, and I'm sure some of you, if you're working in map production, you're doing it much, much quicker. So you might be a bit shocked, but currently it's an annual production cycle and the producers follow a set production plan. So we start the year with a meeting for all the technical producers online. They can ask questions, they can raise any issues. We deliver the production plan to them. We talk about any technical developments, any changes in the tools, and then we send them off and ask them to go and do their work. And then we hold a physical meeting, normally about September, before the final delivery of the data sets. And what the data producers do is they transform their national data to our standard specification. And this is for Euro boundary map, so the boundary data set at 1 to 100,000, and Euro regional map, so the topographic data at 1 to 250,000. We then have 5 regional coordinators, and they support the harmonisation and quality assurance of the Euro regional map data. And you can see on the screen we have 5 areas. And they also provide knowledge sharing and support in their regions, and also technical support. And they tend to be grouped, obviously geographically, but also with like-minded agencies where they probably already have contacts. There might be a language consistency, and they often already are working together on other projects. So this is our existing production plan, as you can see. So there are many processes and people involved, and they all have different skills, and the outcome are these high quality authoritative data sets. As I say, every year the members transform their data to our European specifications for ERM and EBM. And then these are generalized, the data is generalized to create EuroGlobal Map, which is the 1-to-1 million data set. And our members provide their resources to assist in the harmonization, the edge matching, the generalization, and the quality testing of their own national data to our standards, but also of the pan-European data sets. Now, as I said, these data producers, they've got a lot of knowledge and skill. And what happens is they bring to the group things that are happening with their own agencies. So they start to share knowledge if they've, some of them are now starting to use AI in their own national production. So they bring that back to the pan-European production. So it's a really fantastic group. So how it works is that the Euro boundary map data is sent directly to our production team in Germany, at our member BKG, and that is checked and aggregated there. So the Euro boundary map it's one step. And then the boundary layer for the Euro regional map is generalized from the boundary map. So we're trying to streamline. This wasn't always the case, and this was something that we introduced about 8 years ago, I think. And we start to streamline that process. So we generalize the boundary data to create the boundary layer for Euro regional map. And then in the regions, the regional coordinators will pull together the data from their region for Euro regional map. They will harmonize and edge match it. We will ask our data producers to try and edge match across national boundaries, and they will run a series of tests, and then they'll send it to Germany. They will then aggregate again to create the pan-European data sets. They'll also run a set of QA and tests, and then we'll get the data set. So as on the previous screen, we've got Germany, who manage the EBM and ERM production. They're our main production house. We have France, who manage the EGM production, the Netherlands, who manage the QA process, and then we have regional coordinators in France, the Netherlands, and we also have Austria, Moldova, and Lithuania. So as you can see, it's a really pan-European collaborative process. So IGM France take the data from ERM and EBM and they generalize it and they create our 1-to-1 million topo data set. Now this is improving every single year, and actually IGM France have brought in some of the work that they've done nationally, where they now have a portal and the data producer can go in, have a quick look at their data for that, check that it looks okay before it is published to the public. Cadastre Netherlands run our tooling for the quality assurance, and they have a validator tool that is continually updated and refined all the time based on feedback from the data producers and from the production management team. Now, there are many challenges with the production of pan-European data. Some of the key ones I would say are disputed borders, different IDs used over different years for the same data, some countries not having data available, linking the data to international boundaries, and the list goes on and on. But after 20 years, we are producing harmonized official pan-European data. And what I would say is it's not easy. And I think talking to this audience, you probably understand that. It's not an easy thing, but we have really streamlined it over 20 years, and we're really proud of the outputs that we have. And I think it's also worth saying at this point that EuroGeographics is an apolitical organisation. So we only ever find technical solutions to data issues, not political ones, and it's always in communication with our members. Now, one of the downsides of this process, apart from the fact that it is annual, and so it takes quite a lot of time, is that it puts quite a burden on our members to transform their national data to our specifications. So I'm sure you know in recent years there's been a significant change in the landscape that we're all working in. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our move to open data, because this really pushed us forward quite a lot. So as I mentioned, in the past, we would license the data for ERM and EBM for a fee, and that income would come back into the association. It would support our membership activities. We would also pay some of our members a data supply fee for their data, and it allowed us to also pay for some production costs. But for us at EuroGeographics, specifically the push was coming from the user side. Users were asking for more open data, they wanted better licensing conditions, and they really wanted the data free at the point of use. fewer customers were willing to pay for our data sets, also because they were 1 to 250,000 and 1 to 1 million. They weren't giving the users really what they wanted. And this had a major financial implication for us as a small non-profit organisation. So as you all know, open data is brilliant and we're big fans of open data, but at some point the creation of the data has to be paid for and someone has to take responsibility for that. Many of our members were also starting to make their data open, and so they didn't require a data supply fee to come back to them, and we knew that this trend would continue. And from the policy side, with the implementation of the Open Data Public Sector Information Directive, which we were not obliged to comply with, we did want to embrace its aims to really recognise the value of public sector information and that the value of that lies in its use and its reuse of that data. So it really was a perfect storm for us, and we could no longer financially balance the data pillar of activity. So we had to review how we were working. And as with all situations, it was best to go back to the beginning. And for us, that was understanding what our members wanted us within this pillar of activity. And just to remind you, our business is a membership association. We're not a European mapping agency or a production house. We are all about delivering value to our members. So we completely reviewed our data strategy. That was a massive piece of work. And really members confirmed that at the crux of it, what they wanted was for users to be able to find and use their data. So we had a strategic move away from a sales environment where we were selling data to making the data accessible. And we were really lucky that we had some insight into how our open data would be received because we already had one open data set from 2013, our 1 to 1 million data set, and we'd seen a huge spike in users when that was made open. So we knew that by opening the data, we would most likely have a big increase in users. But as a non-profit, the issue was how would we fund this? And we looked towards European funding. So I will talk about Open Maps for Europe quickly, because this is a project that's been and gone now. It started in 2020 and it ran for 3 years, and we applied for CEF funding. Now, we were very lucky because we had a strategy together that we had put together with our members, and then there was a funding programme that directly linked into what we were trying to do. And it was all linked to the policy of the Open Data PSI Directive. So it just worked perfectly with our aims. So we started in January 2020 and finished in December 22. Now, by European standards, it was quite a small project, but for us, at over €700,000, it was pretty significant. We received 75% of the funding, and so we also had to invest 25%, which meant our members were investing in it. And so we needed their confirmation that this was something they wanted us to do. Now, the aim of this project was fairly straightforward. It was about providing easy access to open pan-European official data created from our members and increasing the use of our members' data. We had a project partner, Enjoy Belgium, and our office is in Brussels, so it's very handy because we're just down the road from the Belgian mapping agency. They are very active. They gave us a huge amount of support, and also as did our production teams, specifically IGN France and BKG in Germany. We also took advice from members who've done something similar in the past. So at the time, Registers of Scotland were a member, and they supported us a lot with the tender that we put together for the portal we wanted to create and its user-centric design, which we didn't have any experience in. And we also got support from the General Directorate of the Cadastre in Spain, who really supported us with the cadastral activity. Now, by working together to deliver pan-European data, our members are demonstrating not only what can be achieved through Europe-wide cooperation, but also the benefits that result for the wider public good, specifically in support of policy decision-making. So this was a great thing for us to do. So what did the project deliver? Well, it allowed us to make some of our existing data sets available as open. So we opened up Euro Regional Map and the Digital Elevation Model. EGM was already an open data set. And we also included a gazetteer. This had been a project from a previous European project where we'd been a partner, but the coverage was limited. And so we looked at it, we streamlined the licensing, we worked on the coverage, and we included that as one of our data sets. Now, making data open is not always straightforward. Some of you may have experienced this. You think, oh, I'll just open the data. But it was perhaps even more complex for us because we don't own the data. It's owned by our members. So to make it available as open, we had to have in place the correct legal permissions with every single member who we were including in the open data sets. We also had to move existing end users who were paying for the data across to the open versions, and they all had licensing agreements with us. So that was quite a large piece of work, but it all worked pretty well in the end. We also continued to work with the members to improve the quality of the data sets. It's, as we've discussed, we have an annual production cycle. We're always increasing the quality of the data. We're checking the data, and it just means that we make more good quality data available to the end user. As I said, we have Euro Global Map, so we included that on our portal. Our German member BKG have got an imagery service that's free for use based on the Sentinel data. So they said, well, you can make that available as well. And then we also included a cadastral map. Now, one of the key activities of the project was to create a new production process for this cadastral map. It had been created in a previous project, but the back-end technical process was challenging and it wasn't always successful. So something we wanted to do was to relook at that back-end process. So although it was about creating a cadastral map and making the data available, it was more a technical delivery to try and find a really good process that would work. The aim so the data is very different, we know this, than the national mapping data, but we represent both national mapping and cadastral agencies, so this was super important for us to include as well. And the idea was to have very little impact on our cadastral members in terms of providing data. As you know, cadastral data is very, very detailed. They're big data sets. You know, we didn't want to have to transform them and hold them and follow the same process that we currently did. So it really needed a bit of thought. And an automated process was designed by our subcontractor iDocs in collaboration with our cadastral members. And what happens is it takes the Inspire Atom feed from the member portal, and then it makes it available on our portal so people can see what's available. The third focus within the project was to have a portal, so to make the data sets easy to find and accessible by the end user. And we did this through the development of a new gateway. We went through a European procurement process and iDocs 1. At the time they were ThinkWhere. I feel like we're being a little bit Scottish biased here because we worked with the Scottish team, but iDocs have been absolutely brilliant. We've been working with them since February 2021, and they've just done a fantastic job in understanding our vision, in understanding the data, which is quite complex, and also liaising closely with our members. We started with a user-centric design. So what did the user want? How would they, try and get the data? When we wanted to try and make it as simple as possible and to really remove any burden on the user. We followed an iterative process. So in the past, we'd been involved in projects where a lot of work was happening behind the scenes, but nobody was seeing anything. So we wanted to get stuff out quickly so people could see it, they could see the progress, they could feed back on it, and we could then do some improvements. And we also made the data sets discoverable through the EU data portal via the metadata. Now, please do not ask me any questions about metadata. And if you do have them, I will pass them on to people who are much more cleverer than I am. And we also completed a lot of communications to make people aware of the work we'd done. Now, I will talk about the successes of that project, but what I think is always more interesting are the challenges and how you solve them. So we've been involved in quite a lot of European funded projects in the past, really big projects where we've been a small partner. And so we did have some learnings that we could take, quite a few learnings, but it doesn't mean that you can anticipate every challenge. Now, coverage we knew would be a challenge. So not all of our members could include their data within an open data set. And this can be for political reasons, it can be technical reasons, they maybe don't have resource that can be dedicated to pan-European efforts. And this is absolutely fine. But the goal was to get as much coverage as possible, and we didn't want it to stop us doing the work. But what it does mean is it very clearly shows gaps on the map, and that can cause a little bit of embarrassment for the members. But again, we had to look at our vision, and we really just had to move on with it. Now, as you all know, data can be complex, even for experienced technical specialists. And although we carry out extensive QA on the data sets, some mistakes slip through. And as this was the first time the data had been really properly visualized by many, many end users, we were alerted to quite a lot of things in the first release. And you can see on the screen an area in the Netherlands that had a sea mask on it that was actually land. Now, this went out in the first release, and immediately we started getting feedback, as you can imagine. Now, one of our main challenges that we often deal with on many levels within all activities at EuroGeographics are political sensitivities. In the past, where there may have been a difference of opinion in data or a disputed border, what would happen is we would take both sets of data from both members and we would just supply them both. And it would be up to the end user to decide what they wanted to do. Because they're all official data from that national provider. But when you start to publicly visualize the data, this is not quite so easy, and you have to decide what to show. And as I mentioned, we are apolitical, and as all you know, you put something on a map and you publish it, suddenly it's got quite a political statement. So that had to be managed, and we did have a name issue, I won't say where, that had to be very quickly changed when we published the first version. The next issue we have, and actually this is a continuing issue that we have, and I'm sure if any of you are working with open data, you may have a similar issue, is understanding the users. Now, EuroGeographics are quite unique. We're not a commercial organization. For us, it's not about making money. It's about fulfilling our members' requirements, which is making the data available and used. But it's still important for us to understand who the users are and what they want to use the data for. Now, in the Open Data Directive and in the whole push for open data within the European Commission, it's all about putting as little burden on the end user as possible. And that means collecting very little information about the end user. How many clicks do they have to do to get the data? So we were really being pushed within the project to really follow that. And so actually, if you go onto our portal, which I will give you the link at the end, all you have to do is read the license, accept it, click the data set you want, put in your email address, and that doesn't come to us, it goes to iDocs, and they will email you the links to the data. Now, we don't get that information. So we know how many unique users there are by month, by data set, and that is about it. Now, really for us, we want to know more because we want to know who's using it, why they're using it, what do they like, what don't they like, so that is a challenge. And actually, we're finding now in the European Commission, they want to know more as well. And that's now difficult because you can't go back once you've set something up. Resource is also a challenge for any of you. Well, I know a lot of you are volunteers for the BCS. We're a non-profit. We don't have a never-ending resource. We're not a big organization. We have a small head office team. We have a very talented and skilled production team, but they work within their own organizations and it's not up to me to tell them what to do. And we were also working in a very tight project budget. So that is always a challenge and you have to be quite brutal in deciding what you do and what you don't do. But it's a good learning. It really focuses the mind. And then sustainability, we were doing this project, we wanted it to be successful, but how were we going to continue it after the funding from the Commission? And then talking a little bit about success. So this project was a real success. We delivered all the milestones on time, on budget, and the feedback has been brilliant. And for us, one of the big things, and I know talking to you, this is not rocket science, but was the visualization of the data and actually having a map on a website that people could look at. And this it has been really brilliant. And we finally had the resource to actually do it. It really helps us promote the data. It really helps us promote the reuse of it. It gave us something really positive to say. So now we can go to events, we can use it in social media, we can be on an exhibition stand, and we can actually show people this is what our members' data looks like, this is what it does. So it really supports that aim of enabling access to our members' data. The access is now via the interface. And so before, when we were sending it on DVD or FTP download, people can now just click and download it and they get a link and off they go. And we had a massive increase of the data use. So I think at the end of the project, the percentage for ERM use was like 800% increase. So, this was great. It had really fulfilled our aims. And then the more subtle success was that link to the policy side. So we were very clearly supporting the EU Open Data Directive and the work that was going on for high value data sets, but also supporting the work of the UN, so UNGGIM, and the SDGs. So it's really helped our representation activities as well as our knowledge exchange activities. So it's been really great. But then what do you do next? Well, the project finished or was finishing. And as part of that, we had talked to a lot of our stakeholders and our users. And that showed us that there was still one major user requirement that we were not living up to. And that was really the large scale. I mean, there were others. So they want a better lifecycle management. They wanted the data quicker, but really it was the scale. A lot of them could cope with an annual production cycle, but they really needed that large scale. And that had to be at least 1 to 25,000, if not better. So we knew that our production process that I've showed you just could not be scaled up to meet this requirement. It would require far more resource from our members. There would be impacts on managing the data, the storage of it, lots and lots of things. And this led us to thinking about how could we achieve this for the stakeholders? So we got our really skilled production management team together. We've stuck them in a room at NGI Belgium. We got a whiteboard and some pens, and those clever, clever people came up with an idea of how we could manage it. And so that led us to a new bid for some more European funding. Luckily for us, everything aligned at the same time, and the Digital Europe programme had funding available that we were able to apply for. So this is our current 3-year project. It started in January 23, so straight after the other project finished, and it will finish this December. So we've now just entered the last year of the project. And through this project, what we're doing is developing a new production process for harmonized, large-scale pan-European data and delivering the prototypes of that. So the idea is that we will prove that our members can do it. It's not about creating a fully finished map. That's just not possible with the funding that's available, but it will prove that our members can do this. It's absolutely aligned to EU policy objectives and the UN core geospatial data recommendations. And it's also enhancing and extending the existing data sets and the portal, as well as tool development and the cadastral map. So we are the coordinator at EuroGeographics, but this time we have 5 partners instead of just one. So IGN France, NGI Belgium, Cadastre Netherlands, Hellenic Cadastre, and the Spanish Cadastre. And then we have 2 subcontractors, BKG in Germany and IDOCS. And that's all funded through Digital Europe. Well, 50% funded through Digital Europe and 50% funded through EuroGeographics. And what it's doing is it's addressing this challenge of finding easily accessible pan-European edge-matched harmonized large-scale high-value geospatial data and making it easily accessible through the licensing as well. It will save time for users because they don't have to do it themselves. And actually what we're finding is people are just not doing it, even though the national data is often available. And it's also supporting our members in implementing rules for the open data and the reuse of public sector information. And it's really demonstrating how demand for geospatial information in all common data spaces of the European data strategy can be met. So we're hitting lots of things there. So we really wanted to create and maintain a new pan-European high-value large-scale prototype, and with the aim of the data being 1 to 10,000, although some of it might be 1 to 25,000. So within the project, we are including 3 main themes, so administrative units, transport networks, hydrography. These are all identified as high-value data within the high-value data regulation. So the high-value data regulation, for those of you who may not know, it's linked to the Open Data Directive from the European Commission. It was a regulation that was trying to identify high-value data that would support growth within EU27, and it was making member states make those data sets available by June last year. Now, it's not all NMCA data. There's environmental data, transport, mobility. There's quite a lot. But what it means is that for at least EU27, those high-value data sets should be available as open data services from the national agencies. Now, actually, that's not the case, but that is the theory, and we could talk again about that all day. And what we wanted to achieve was that the prototype would be available under a single open data license on our portal. Now, it's still a centralized process, and we've been questioned quite a lot about that. But it does reduce the burden on our members in terms of supplying the data. There's been a lot of reuse of information and intelligence and results from other projects. So we're really building on work that's already been completed, and we're taking a practical and technical approach to harmonization. Again, remember, we're apolitical. So at 1 to 250,000, technical approach can often work quite well if there is a challenge between two members. But at 1 to 10,000, that is a little bit trickier. So we are taking this technical and practical approach. And it really will demonstrate that we, EuroGeographics, and our members can provide this data to meet user requirements and ensure that it's accessible and downloadable. Now, the first release, the first prototype release is available on our portal, and it includes 3 countries, Belgium, Netherlands, and France, and it includes 2 themes, boundary and transport. So they've already started to create that, which is absolutely brilliant. Now, a further release of the prototype will come next month with a final version at the end of 2025. We will have 10 countries by that point across 3 themes. So on the map in front of you, I know it's not very pretty, but you can tell me that later. You can see the area we're aiming to cover and the red boundary line, so all the way from Spain to Estonia, because the point is to really prove about the edge matching and the harmonization across boundary and theme. We have more data sets available from some of our members, but due to the limited project budget, they can't be included as part of this project. But IGM France, who are working on this, are looking at what is possible and what we could perhaps do at the end of the project. And the EuroGeographics Management Board and its members are also thinking about that. So hopefully it won't be the end at the end of this project. Now, the production process is a little bit different to our existing one. So we access the members' national data with lookup tables. So they just have their services available. All they have to do is fill in a table that tells IGM France which themes and data sets to access. We're then creating new tools for harmonization, lifecycle management, edge matching, and quality. And then, ta-da, suddenly we have a great new database. Now, please don't ask me too many questions about this because this has all been done by the very clever people at IGM France and Cadastre Netherlands and NGI Belgium and BKG in Germany. So there is, really, they've done really well. And the utopia is that they will then generalize that data set and we will stop our existing production for 1 to 10,000, 1 to 100,000 and 1 to 250,000, and we will just generalize it all from the database. Now, this is how a lot of national mapping agencies work. They have one mass database and then they generalize for their other data sets. But as I said, we are not a European mapping agency. We don't have the resource to do that. So this is quite innovative for us, actually. But as always, challenges. One is finding a common data model. So the team took work from our existing data models. They're all heavily involved in the existing production process. They also looked at the UN GGIM core data and the work that had been done on that, and also a previous European project called ELF. However, as with our last project, we're following this iterative process. So as more countries are onboarded and we learn more, this will be modified. Now, they started off with Netherlands, France, and Belgium because they're all project partners. They're talking regularly. They're sitting in the same rooms often, so they can solve challenges between them quite easily. But as they bring in new data sets, then they're finding slightly different things they didn't know about. But that's all part of the fun. Now, the second challenge is common international boundaries. Now, at the minute, we have an international boundary data set that's managed by BKG in Germany. No data provider is allowed to touch it. It's all done through Germany, so there's quite a lot of control. But at 1 to 10,000, it's a little bit trickier. You can't just snap the data to the boundary and tell people that's where the boundary is. So where we've got full agreement, we have an official line, and that's fine. If there's only a theoretical agreement, then we will create an agreed technical line. So that's agreed between the two nations, and that's a technical solution. But if there is a significant difference or a disagreement, then we will include two boundary lines because we cannot be rewriting the truth. And you can see on the line on the screen, there's an example there of France and Italy, where there might be some areas of dispute. Now, the third challenge I wanted to tell you about was about finding common representation. So again, at the scale of 1 to 10,000, this is much more of an issue than in our existing data sets when visualizing the data. So what IGN France are doing, which I think is absolutely brilliant, is they're keeping all the data that's coming from those from the national data set. So they're not deleting anything, but they do have to show one version. They can't be showing every version. So the user can go back and get the other version, but there has to be something for them to see on the screen. So they're building a common core, and this is all being completed using a Python harmonization tool. And as you can see on the screen, we've got a French railway station, we've got a Dutch railway station. They are visualized differently. The French one has got a polygon, the Dutch one is just lines. And what they've done is they've then transformed the French railway station to be the same as the Dutch one. And to have this automated data production, we have to be more restrictive in what we ask producers for. So at the beginning, IGN France were saying to the other data producers, just send us everything so we can see it, we can find out what's going on. But actually, there are too many data formats to handle. Inspire, for those of you who've ever worked with Inspire, the implementation differs depending on the country. So although Inspire was meant to have this harmonization, it's really quite challenging. And it may not be, the Inspire data might not be as complete or up to date as the national data. So they need to decide what to take. And then the fourth one is about consistency across international boundaries. So this is all about edge matching. Again, a tool is being developed for this, and it's currently in beta, and this will be amended and developed further as more data is included and they have more knowledge from the other data sets. So on the screen, the international boundary is in green in each of the example. And then you can see what the tool is doing is it is edge matching across boundaries for the data. So for this automated data production, we need to define the acceptable rate of error. So what do we think is okay to have as an error? And also the acceptable time to spend on control and manual corrections, because that's fine when you have 3 countries, but once you have perhaps EU27, you can't be going in and manually changing a lot of things. So this is all work in progress, and it's all knowledge development as the technical teams get more data from the members. Now, the high value large scale prototype, the name really needs a bit of work, but that's what we're calling it at the minute. The version 1 is available on our portal, and I'd really encourage you to have a little look at it. Do feedback, let us know what you think. Just remember, the portal is not a GIS, it's really an access point to get the data. So yes, we're visualizing the data, but it's really about showing the user what is available and then them being able to get it as easily as possible. And then also as part of OME2, we're extending and enhancing the open cadastral map. As I said, our cadastral members are just as important as our national mapping members. And so we're significantly increasing the coverage of that. And it is providing a single place to find out the authoritative Inspire compliant cadastral data that's available and where. And what it does is it shows the user what's available, and then they are taken to the national portal to get the data that they want. So we currently have 10 countries, and this year we'll be adding in an additional 5 countries. This part of the project is being managed by the Hellenic Cadaster and the Spanish Cadaster. And as part of this, they're also developing a strategy for cadastral data for Europe. And EuroGeographics will be considering their recommendations for going forward. They've also been working on additional functionality so that the end user has easy access to more information about each of the parcels. Now, on to the good stuff for you guys, the data viz. I'm sure you're all having heart attacks looking at those images on the screen. And it was hard for me, being originally a cartographer, coming in and looking at this data. So this is what we used to put on presentations back in the day, because it was all about data. It wasn't about the visualization. And we never had any resource or time to put into creating the nice cartographic representation of the data. The production teams were there to manage the data sets, so to sort out the quality, make them available. They weren't there to manage the visualization. Just to remind you, it was up to the end user to do that. Now, there has to be a cut-off point for when you're supplying something. Where do you stop? And unfortunately, we stopped maybe a little bit early. So having the interface with some mapping was actually quite revolutionary for us. So again, you know, we were limited in resource, time, everything. But we spoke to our project partner in the first project, Enjoy Belgium. Now, interestingly, they were using our Euro-regional map dataset within their own geoportal to show the borders round Belgium. And they obviously didn't have that data because they only had the Belgian data, but they were using the ERM data to show that. So they had already done some styling for that data. So IDOX took that and tweaked it a little bit. We had quite a lot of discussions about it, but we really needed to make the map less cluttered. And I hope you can see they've made it cleaner. They didn't have a lot of resource to do this, as in we didn't have a lot of money to pay them to do this, but I think the result was fine for what we had. We did get some feedback about road colours, and perhaps you also don't like purple roads, so do let me know. I'd be interested to hear your views. And then on the digital elevation model, not so difficult to do for IDOCs. They just use a different palette of colours, and you can see Cyprus there looking lovely compared to the other image, which is a little bit stark. In terms of the high value, large scale prototype visualization, we're using the same styling, but there were a few challenges that IDOCs had with this when they implemented it. So varying sizes of administrative boundaries across regions. So they were trying to balance between label size and legibility. You know, labeling, it's always a challenge, isn't it? Also in the case of Belgium and the Netherlands, they had admin boundaries at level 3. So they were having to find that link between not having too much information, the font size, but also allowing the user to understand where they were. Also labeling multi-polygon administrative unit areas in France was a challenge. They implemented a solution to try and cut out the names, to try and reduce that. And they have now created a process that gives them a seamless integration of additional countries. So that was good. But also what was interesting was the seamless connection of data between countries. Now at 1 to 10,000, it's much harder because different countries will code different data sets differently. So some will code a road as something and someone will code it as something else. So you might have a style, of course, for that A road, but it won't, the data set won't come up as the same data because it's been coded differently. So that has been a challenge, but the aim is to have you know, cohesion and continuity across international boundaries. And I think if you go and have a look at the prototype, you can zoom in on the boundary between France and Belgium and the Netherlands, and you can see that it is quite seamless actually. Now, I've got some more examples here that IDOCs gave me. So they had a significant challenge from trying to display smaller admin unit boundaries at closer zoom levels. So the challenge is, as you zoom in, you don't know where you are. So initially you thought you were somewhere, and then you zoom in, you zoom in, you zoom in, and suddenly all you've got are some pink lines and you don't know where you are. So they tried to add in different boundary levels and different opacity to try and differentiate between boundaries and other features like roads and railways. So that was quite a challenge. And I know this is not rocket science to this audience, but just, you know, to remind you, our aim was about the data, but obviously showing the user what was available. So we had these challenges that were perhaps slightly unexpected. And then the next one is clarifying port areas. So initially they had a blue infill, but then that was giving the impression that these were actual water bodies. So again, as you zoom in, you might forget slightly where you are. It's not very obvious. And so people were thinking they were bodies of water, and actually they're not, they're port areas. So this was a change that they had to make. And then also balancing railroad representation. So it has its own challenges, particularly with different densities of rail lines, and then trying to distinguish them from roads and ensure different visibility across different scales. So one of the challenges iDocs had was the zooming in and the zooming out, which is not something the technical teams within the members have because they're just creating the data. So they've done really, really well in dealing with that. So I had lots of more slides, but I decided I had gone on enough. So I hope I've given something for everyone to have a think about, and I hope you understand a little bit more about EuroGeographics and also about our pan-European data production, both our old production system that we're currently still using, and also how we're progressing towards the future. So do have a look at our website. As I mentioned, quite a few of our events are available online for non-members, but also have a look at our portal, have a look at the data, let us know what you think. We'd be really happy to take any feedback. So thank you again, and I'm very happy to take any questions that you might have.
Right. Thank you very much, Angela, for that. That's been a very comprehensive.
It's a lot of information.
I think it's very comprehensive. I think it gives a very interesting insight into, and it just gives a very interesting insight into the collaboration between different nations on with providing mapping data. So it's I'm hoping we'll have a few questions from this because it's hopefully maybe they'll be digesting some of it. But so yes, so if we're just so we'll open the Q&A session for now. So if anyone has any questions, if they can drop them into the chat, we'll come to them and we'll see we'll just get there. Okay, right. So yeah, so okay, we've got comment here. Brilliant talk, so comprehensive. How are you reuniting new EW nation countries, e.g., the Register of Scotland?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to mention the Brexit issue, but I probably have to. Um, so Registers of Scotland were a member of ours. They're obviously a cadastral land registry agency, and HMLR were also a member of ours. But what can I say? Government focus was moving away from Europe, and they really couldn't justify their membership. So although they were getting value from it at the knowledge exchange level, the policy level wasn't really working for them. So we do have UK data coming from OS for sure, and and also Northern Ireland, which is great, and we have some great data producers in both. So we we don't currently have cadastral data or land registry data from HMLR or Registers of Scotland, but we are still talking to them. So yeah, Brexit has been a challenge, shall we say?
Okay.
Oh,
Before
you want
before
the
we get the next question, we've got a request. Can you put up the web address for the portal again? I think you've
yes, I
got
will stick it in the chat.
at least one person interested.
That's good. That's good. Let me stick that in the chat.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next question as soon as there it is. So if anyone wants to access it, it's in the chat right there. So it's
Good.
okay. So we've got the next question. It's who are the users? You mentioned iDocs new, but don't know.
So iDocs are our subcontractor. They are, as I said, they were called Thinkware. They're based in Scotland, but they're now part of iDocs Group. And so they're the subcontractor developing the portal and working very closely with us. But the users, I mean, we have key stakeholder users. So, for example, the European Environment Agency are taking the service that's provided for Euro Regional Map and providing it as a base layer on their ground motion service, which was brilliant for us because it just shows that they wanted authoritative data included. But the issue of open data is this fact that we don't know who the users are. So we have people who've signed up to our newsletter. So those email addresses we're allowed to see through GDPR. We're not allowed to contact them for anything that's not to do with the portal. So yeah, it is a challenge. It's a real challenge. I mean, we have a lot of users within the European Commission that we do know about because they talk to us a lot. But yeah, we've been trying to do some work on that actually. And it's interesting because the European Commission have come to us to ask if we're getting a lot of people using it from outside of Europe. And we can track through Google Analytics who's hitting the website, but again, we don't know who's using the actual data. But I can tell you that we're having about 450 unique new users every month on our portal, which is for us is massive. But it's a challenge with open data. It is a challenge and something I think we need to try and solve. So yeah, so sorry, I can't tell you any more about users.
That's no problem. No, thank you for answering the questions that you could there. Okay, so more statements saying giving appreciation for the talk and everyone doing uh, everyone doing a fantastic job so far on this. It looks great, and they'll definitely be having a look at the data when they can. So that's
Great, great. And I think it is a great example of collaboration. It's just a really good example. And the teams that work together they're just brilliant and they're so inspiring. And they solve all these issues and they always get to a good solution and they always have a smile on their face. So it's really a pleasure to work with them, I have to say. So yeah, thank you very much. I'll pass that on to them, especially the people whose slides I stole to include.
no, it's genuinely very interesting, and the fact of just making people aware of open data that they can get hold of. It's always that challenge of getting good quality open data, and
Yes. Yeah.
the fact that all the effort has been put into well to unify it as one set of data rather than a lot of mismatched sets of data from each individual nation, which will have their own particular quirks and
Yeah.
as you've highlighted.
Because even with open data, organizations can modify the open data licensing. It can all be slightly different. So even if you're taking open data, you still have to read the license. You still have to understand it. So yeah, ours all comes under one harmonized license. So it's only one license agreement for all the data sets. So yeah, do have a look. Let us know. I'd love to hear from you. So yeah.
Okay. So yes, here we've got a question here. It's the as an apolitical organization, have you noticed cross-national exchange uh, in getting easier or more difficult over the last few years? And then has Brexit, COVID, the invasion of Ukraine had an impact one way or another?
Yeah, so as always, it's people that make the difference. So the people who are working together are always working together and they're having conversations and they're doing lots of collaboration. Brexit was a challenge because of the political change within the UK. So as I mentioned, for our UK members, that was a challenge. But Ordnance Survey and Northern Ireland they still find a great value in the work they have with us, which is great. The other members who are not EU tend to be either accession countries to the EU or they're interested in what the EU is doing because it directly affects them. So even if they're not part of EU 27, they're still interested in what the European Commission is doing. COVID hasn't had a direct impact, except I think everyone is feeling the squeeze financially. So, people don't want to travel as much, of course. And obviously now we can do so many things online. So we've really adapted to that. Ukraine was challenging. When that happened, Russia and Belarus were members of EuroGeographics, and we had to not include them any longer. So that was very difficult because again, it's the people on the ground. We still hear from some of our colleagues, and they're not the ones who've made those big national decisions. So it's really challenging. But in terms of cross-national exchange, I think it's as good as it's always been. We have lots of really great knowledge exchange and conversations with all our members, and it's really encouraging to see that. And I have to say, I think for me, it's one of the best parts of my job is that exposure to other cultures and working with other people and learning how they work. It's really super. Oh, I see there's a question about Overture.
I just saw it appear there.
So Overture, actually, we've had some great conversations with Overture. Um, we have been talking to them about the high value, large scale prototype and if it's something they would be interested in, because actually we would rather that organizations were using authoritative data from our members than perhaps their own data. Overture have got, they're currently working on specific data sets, and we're working on some of the same and some different ones. So we're actually talking to them. They're doing some great technical work, and they're quite interested in what we're doing. And I think because we're a non-profit, we're not out for, we're not a commercial organization. We can talk to organizations like that and have some really good chats. We've also spoken a lot with Esri. We've spoken with Google. So yeah, we have some quite good relationships with these organizations. So let's see what happens once our prototype is finished and see if they will use some of the data or not.
Okay, so thank you very much for that one. That's yes, yes, it's generally been a very interesting talk, and it's I can see from even the chat, and you can see it yourself that there's quite a bit of appreciation for, well, raising the awareness of what's what's here and the amount of work that's gone in to make it happen.
Great, and I
So
will pass that on to team. It's not easy, as you all know. It's not easy. It's not easy. So yeah, our teams have done a brilliant job.
oh no, I can keep seeing the appreciation coming in there, and
Oh, thank you.
so I know I think it's genuinely appreciated the work that you and the team are actually all doing to bring this together. So it's and hopefully this can raise a bit more another bit more awareness of for at least a few more people that what's available and well, how they can make use of it.
Great, great. Well, thank you for letting me share it with you. It's really great to share it with an audience who I know understand the challenges and the hard work that's gone in. So thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yes, thank you very much. So I think what I'll do now is I'll just bring the talk to a close, and so I just want to say thank you very much to everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Angela for the talk. Very comprehensive and very interesting for generally anyone that's been listening. So I want to once again thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you next time for another Tea Time talk. But for today, I want to say thank you and goodbye.